Imagine for a moment that you are trying to find someone. Maybe it's an old high school friend, a potential business partner, or even a distant cousin you haven't spoken to in years. You type their name into the search bar of the big three platforms, expecting the usual flurry of vacation photos, professional milestones, or at the very least, a grainy profile picture from 2014. But instead, you get a blank screen. No results found. It's an eerie feeling, isn't it? In 2026, finding someone with zero digital footprint feels less like a technical glitch and more like discovering a glitch in the matrix. It's as if they don't actually exist in the physical world because they haven't bothered to rent space in the digital one. We've reached a point where having no social media presence is treated with more suspicion than having a criminal record. If you aren't on Instagram, are you even living? If you didn't post the sunset, did the sun actually go down? This brings me to a question that I know is going to trigger some intense debate in the comments, so buckle up. Is a person who avoids social media a highly evolved master of their own mind, or are they just a socially stunted hermit who is terrified of the modern world? I'm genuinely curious to see where you all land on this spectrum, because I read and reply to every single comment, and your perspectives often challenge my own in the best ways. Also, if you find this dive into the digital ghost fascinating, hitting that like button puts a massive smile on my face. It's the only metric of social validation that actually makes my day. As the philosopher and tech pioneer Jaron Lanier once said, "The only way to be free is to be invisible to the machines." This idea of digital invisibility has shifted from being a sign of being out of touch to becoming the ultimate modern status symbol. Think about it. 10 years ago, if you weren't on social media, people thought you were a Luddite who couldn't figure out how to reset a router. Today, if someone tells you they don't have a Facebook or an X account, there's a subtle air of mystery and even a bit of envy. It's the availability paradox we've discussed before. The idea that being accessible to everyone at all times actually lowers your perceived value. When someone is a ghost, they aren't participating in the social performance that consumes the rest of us. They aren't curating a version of their life to be consumed by strangers. They are simply living the life. There is a deep, almost primal power in being the only person who knows what you had for dinner last night. Let's be a little sarcastic for a second. We live in an era where privacy is something we only talk about when we're complaining that our phones are listening to us talk about cat food. Yet, we voluntarily upload our location, our relationships, our political leanings, and our breakfast choices to a server farm in Oregon every 30 seconds. The person who is not on social media has looked at the terms and conditions of modern life and just clicked decline. They've realized that the social mask most people wear is actually a heavy, suffocating weight. When you aren't posting for an audience, you don't have to worry about the angle. You don't have to worry if your brand is consistent. You can just be an unoptimized, messy, inconsistent human being. It's a level of freedom that feels almost illegal in the current climate. But what drives this decision? For many, it isn't a political statement, it's a matter of cognitive sovereignty. The human brain was never designed to process the curated highlights of 5,000 friends simultaneously. We weren't built to compare our behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's best-of reel every time we wait in line for coffee. The digital ghost has opted out of the comparison trap. They've decided that their mental bandwidth is too valuable to be traded for likes from people they didn't even like in high school. They understand that every notification is a tiny digital tug on their leash, and they've simply cut the cord. It's a quiet rebellion. While everyone else is busy building a community, the person off-grid is busy building a life. There's also the element of the information diet. If you spend 3 hours a day scrolling, you are essentially letting a black box algorithm decide what you think about, what you worry about, and what you buy. The person who isn't on social media has reclaimed that time. They are the ones who actually finish the 800-page biography of a Roman emperor or spend 4 hours woodworking without checking their phone once. They haven't lost the ability to focus. In a world of brain rot and 30-second clips, the ability to hold a single thought for more than a minute is becoming a superpower. It's not that they are better than the rest of us. It's just that they are playing a different game. They are choosing to be unavailable, which, ironically, makes their presence much more potent when they actually do show up in the real world. Now, let's look at the darker side of this, because I promised we'd keep it real. There is a segment of society that views social media absence as a red flag for social maladjustment. We've all seen the jokes. If he doesn't have an Instagram, he's definitely hiding a wife and 3 kids in another state. There is a deep-seated fear that if we can't vet someone through their digital footprint, they must be hiding something sinister. We've outsourced our trust to the blue checkmark. We trust the verified stranger more than the unverified neighbor. This is the social performance trap at its peak. We assume that if someone isn't performing, they must be plotting. But for most ghosts, the only thing they are hiding is their peace of mind. They aren't interested in being seen because they are busy being. One of our community members, Billy, recently shared that his breakthrough moment came when he stopped seeking the respect of his peers at a competitive level and started focusing on discovering himself. This is the essence of the not caring philosophy. When you step off the digital stage, you realize that 90% of your anxieties were performative. You were worried about things that only existed in the glow of your screen. The person off social media doesn't have a breakout moment because they never let themselves get caged in the first place. They are the ones who can walk through a beautiful park and just look at the trees without wondering which filter would make the leaves look more autumnal. There is a certain irony in me sitting here on a digital platform telling you about the virtues of not being on digital platforms. I'm well aware of the sarcasm inherent in the situation, but the goal isn't to say that the internet is evil. It's to point out that we've forgotten how to exist without it. We've become relationship zombies, physically present but psychologically tethered to a device. We are seeing a massive rise in people who are sexually inactive or completely uninterested in deep intimacy because their brains are so fried by digital overstimulation that a real human being feels boring in comparison. The ghost is the only one who isn't a zombie. They are the ones who can look you in the eye for an entire conversation without their hand twitching toward their pocket. They have tribalism in its purest form. Real, physical, intimate connections that don't need a Wi-Fi connection to thrive. Consider the psychological toll of the always-on culture. We are essentially living in a global panopticon where we are both the prisoners and the guards. We watch each other, we judge each other, and most importantly, we watch ourselves being watched. The digital ghost has walked out of the prison. They don't care about the civilized focal point that Gavin mentioned, where society identifies the curve and tries to stay ahead of it. They aren't ahead of the curve or behind it. They have simply stepped off the line entirely. They are like Enrico, who discovered his true self early on and preferred solitude over a life of hypocrisy. There is an integrity to that kind of isolation. It's not about being antisocial, it's about being pro-soul. When we talk about the psychology of not caring, we often focus on the big things: careers, reputations, legacy. But the most radical act of not caring is refusing to participate in the digital attention economy. Every time you open an app, 1,000 engineers on the other side of the screen are working to keep you there for just one more second. They are using every psychological trick in the book, from variable reward schedules to social validation loops, to harvest your attention. The person who isn't on social media is the only one winning that war. They aren't just saving time, they are saving their own autonomy. They are refusing to be the product in a world where everything is for sale. We also have to address the idea of choice versus nature. As Bruce pointed out in our discussion on identity, much of who we are is settled long before we have the words for it. For some, Being a digital ghost isn't a conscious protest, it's a natural disposition. Their nervous systems simply aren't calibrated for the high-frequency noise of the digital age. They feel the overstimulation like a physical pain. For them, deleting their accounts isn't a detox, it's a return to their natural state of being. It's like Amanda, who realized she needed to move past the place where she got stuck to reconnect with what truly mattered. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to leave the noise behind. And let's talk about the safety net aspect. James shared a powerful story about being the emergency contact for someone for 30 years and finally realizing the value of choosing to be unavailable to reclaim his own life. Social media turns us into the emergency contact for the entire world's drama. We are constantly reachable, constantly on call for everyone else's crises, opinions, and needs. By opting out, the digital ghost is setting a boundary that most of us are too afraid to even imagine. They are saying, I am not your safety net. I am my own person. It's a terrifying realization for those around them, but it's a liberating one for the individual. There is also a massive difference between being lonely and being alone. The digital world has terrified us of being alone. It has convinced us that if we aren't constantly connected, we are failing. But as Mike mentioned, tribalism allows for intimacy without the need for constant performance. True tribes don't need a status update to know you exist. They know you exist because you are there, in the room, sharing the dialect of real human experience. The digital ghost understands that one real conversation over coffee is worth more than 10,000 likes from strangers who wouldn't notice if you disappeared tomorrow. Think about the sheer amount of mental clutter we carry around. We know the intimate details of celebrities' divorces. We know the political opinions of people we haven't seen in 20 years. And we know exactly which influencers are canceled this week. Why? None of this information improves our lives. None of it helps us become better versions of ourselves. It's just digital noise, filling up the spaces where our own thoughts should be. The person who isn't on social media has a clean brain. They have space for original thought. They have room for boredom. And as any artist will tell you, boredom is the womb of creativity. When you kill boredom with a scroll, you kill the very thing that makes you human. So where does this leave the rest of us? Are we all doomed to be relationship zombies, forever staring at our screens while the real world passes us by? Not necessarily, but we can learn something from the ghosts. We can learn that the world doesn't end if we don't post about it. We can learn that our value isn't determined by an algorithm. We can learn to reclaim our intellectual sovereignty and stop letting Silicon Valley decide what we care about. We can choose to be a little more unavailable, a little more mysterious, and a lot more present. As we wrap this up, I want to reiterate that question I asked at the beginning. Is the digital ghost the ultimate master of their own fate, or are they just missing out on the civilized focal point of our era? Do you feel more civilized when you're connected, or do you feel like you're losing your mind? I'm genuinely looking forward to the comments on this one. Tell me your stories of deleting apps, the withdrawals you felt, or the peace you found. I read and reply to all of them, and I promise, no matter what you say, I won't share it on Instagram. If this dive into the psychology of digital invisibility gave you a moment of clarity, or even just a moment of discomfort, hitting that like button would mean a lot. It tells me that you value these deeper conversations and helps me keep this channel a focal point for those of us trying to stay human in a digital world. We'll be back soon with more explorations of the mind, but for now, I challenge you to do something radical. Go for a walk, leave your phone at home, and don't tell a single soul where you went. See how it feels to be a ghost for an hour. I think you'll find that the real world has a much better connection than any 5G tower can offer. Stay sovereign, stay mysterious, and I'll see you in the next one.